Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lending Podcast. We are your hosts. That's Jeff Jones, and I'm John Burnham, and it's great to be with you again today. We've got a great topic for you. We're going to talk about relocations and the lending requirements involved when you're relocating.
Yeah, so we are here in Austin, Texas. It is one of the hot spots of people relocating to. So we do get these scenarios regularly. You know, one of our favorite things to do is connect with our realtors about who are they seeing coming to Austin and what kind of challenges are they facing? What can they prepare for ahead of time, specifically with their lending needs? And so we think this is a great video, good time to do it. So welcome to Austin.
Welcome to Austin. Well, no, we thought we'd start with just a recent example of this exact scenario. So we have a client right now who's closing in a couple of weeks on their home in Austin. They have not yet sold their home in California, and they are relocating, obviously, from California to Texas. And the whole timing dynamic was challenging because they want to get their house listed and sold, but they're still living there, but they need to get to Austin quickly. And so how do we work out that calendar? And so what we ended up doing was helping them with a portfolio loan here in Austin. So they're going to purchase here first before they sell their home. They actually
non-contingent
purchase. Yes. And that's, of course, important for our realtor partners so they can go out there and have the most leverage with a seller and put in an offer that's non-contingent on the sale, right? And then once they're moved out of their home, they can stage it properly, prepare it for the listing. And we know there's a ton of equity in the home. That's one of the things we evaluate is what is that going to look like once they sell? How much equity are they going to have? How much cash? What are they going to do with that cash on the purchase here in Austin? And so we just put this scenario together to allow them to purchase here, have some peace of mind, get that move done, cross-country move. And then once they're here, they get their home sold. And then we can reassess what we're going to do with that cash, refinance it, or even pay the loan off in full. They're going to have a pretty big windfall from their sale.
That's a great scenario. So I think a lot of families, I mean, I could just put myself in that situation where how many, transitions do you want to handle in tandem with each other? Or do you want to have, tackle them one at a time? Whether it's like, okay, first we buy and then we sell, or first we sell, then we buy. And what scenario is more smooth for people, especially with families, with kids? A lot of people, they don't want to rent a place temporarily after they sell their home. They want their home ready to move in right away. And that's sometimes such an easier transition especially with, when there's more than just one person.
Right. No, it can be very complex. And I think the challenge a lot of times is, can you qualify for two homes at the same time, right? Or do you want to try to qualify for two homes at the same time? Because there's also a comfort level there, right, of taking on this new mortgage before you've sold your existing house and have that current mortgage. And so it's really evaluating the first of all, the comfort level. Are you willing to take on the purchase before you sell? And then also, can you qualify? And so in this particular instance, under traditional lending guidelines, they would not have qualified for a mortgage to purchase before they sold. And so what is the tool that we have in our toolbox to get that loan done? Well, it's a portfolio loan that is a make sense loan. It's a common sense loan. They have cash in the bank. They have $1 million in equity in their home they're selling out there and on the West Coast. And then they're buying a home in Austin that's very reasonably priced compared to the home they own there. And so it's just a common sense, make sense loan. It bridges the gap, right? You hear a lot of thing about bridge loans in the marketplace. This is considered for us a portfolio loan with one of our partner banks, but similar concept.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of working with local lenders that have products like that, like we have, is we can think outside the box and work outside the qualified mortgage scenarios and find one for you that will work and get you the home you want.
That's right. We hear a lot of feedback from our realtor partners, a lot of feedback from our clients that the national lenders, if they've had a conversation, their box is just, it's small. They're not going to have that expanded guideline, that expanded lending opportunity to make this common sense type of loan. Because we get this from a lot from our clients too. They'll say, I could stroke a check for this house. Like I could pay cash for this house. How come it's so hard to get a loan? It's like, well, it's not always hard to get a loan if you have the right lending tools in your toolbox. So that's what we want to bring to the table is that creative financing, that bridging that gap, really making that transition from another state into this area easier, make it an easier
Yeah.
transition. So that's a good scenario. So that's kind of a scenario of the gentleman is staying with the same company, relocating from another state to Central Texas. And we wanted to touch on that scenario and some of the lending guidelines, but also talk about if you're changing companies, right? You're uprooting your family or just yourself, perhaps, moving from a different state. You've been working at company X, now you're going to be working at company Y. How do we qualify you on the new income, the new job employment, and the timing of trying to close perhaps before you start your job? Because we hear that a lot too. I don't want
Right.
to move twice. And so maybe touch on that a little bit, kind of that trying to avoid moving twice.
Yeah, I like this. So, when you're with the same company, a lot of it is explanation from the company that you work for. So we reach out to your HR department for you. We get those letters of explanation figured out. If there's a new position or like a position transfer, it's really these job offer letters,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when they're internal, they might be labeled different. But basically, it's going to have things like start date are
Mm-hmm.
declared on there. They're going to have signatures on them to verify that these are legitimate. And then it'll have, the whole compensation package. So dates, names, letterhead, signatures, and comp package. And
And
so,
sometimes the cost of living is different here than where
oh,
you're
good
coming
point.
from. So the income, so we've seen incomes actually go down from where
Right.
you were to where you're going to be, and that's okay. We're going to use that income on your new position, right? We're
Yeah.
not going to look at what you have been making. We're going to look at what the
Yeah.
new income is going to be.
But yeah, so we work with HR departments to get the right docs for you as well. So it's kind of like a team effort to make sure that everything is, blessed by underwriting, that your income is good with that company continuation. Now, as that changes from a new company, it's kind of a different ball of wax. So what a lot of times we look for is, are you in the same career path? And is it a like to like job that you moved from, that you're going to? Is it the same industry? If it's the same industry, it's a lot more convenient for our underwriting team to bless it. And so that makes a huge difference. And
and
uh,
and the type of pay.
and the type of
So
pay. No,
so
that's
this
good. I
this
like
was
that.
this was a challenging one. I remember a year ago, actually this month, a year
Yeah.
ago, and we were able to get it done through one of our bank statement programs. But this particular gentleman was in the automotive industry. He was not on the sales side; he was on the finance side. But moving from another state into the Austin area, he was taking a position with an automotive group. It was 8 or 9 dealerships, I think, and he
Yeah.
was like the finance manager for multiple dealerships. Really big position, pay increase. I mean, it was a significant role, and the way his compensation was going to be paid is a percentage of the revenue from the
Oh
dealerships.
boy.
And so, kind of a complex income scenario. It was not a base salary, but they did have a guaranteed amount of money for him for the
Interesting.
first year.
Yeah.
So we looked at that. It didn't really fall under traditional vanilla Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac type guidelines that we had to go to an alternate type of lending scenario. Still a competitive loan and the rates and the terms and so forth, but it's probably a loan that he's going to refinance eventually. So you get here, you get in your house, you get closed, have some sustained income consistently for a year. Now we're hitting that 1 year mark, and he'll be able to show that history of payments with his new job and then be able to potentially refinance. So that's one angle, is
Yeah.
to, if you don't exactly have that pay structure that
Right.
qualifies for a traditional mortgage, there's alternative options out there.
Yeah.
Especially when you're putting a good chunk of money down. He was putting 20% down in this case, so you can really make loans happen with some alternative lending styles.
Yeah.
But that was an example of, he went from more of a salaried role to now a variable pay role, and it doesn't fit in that traditional box.
It doesn't, but it's doable.
That's
So
right.
that's what I want, people to not be discouraged. And one of the beautiful things that we have here at Benchmark and some other lenders have is that pre-contract underwrite. So sometimes we call it a TBD underwrite because we don't have an address yet. So to be determined address. So we're underwriting you before you find your property and before you go under contract. And that is a step above a pre-approval because it's going through the whole underwriting team as well. And that gives you a lot more assurances to secure that loan.
It does. It does. Yeah. So we touched on moving from another state here or another town. Could be Texas to Texas, maybe Dallas
Right.
to Austin or Houston to Austin.
It's a different state.
And yeah, it's different. It's right. It seems like it. El Paso certainly seems like a different state from
Right.
here. You can drive 800 miles there and still be in Texas. So let's talk about when you're switching companies and you want to close before you start your job, because we want to get
Doable.
here, close on the loan, get moved in, and now we're going to start our job a week or two later. How do we do that? I mean, is that even possible?
It's possible. So, and this is where the beauty of that offer letter and the power of it come into play, is because we basically just need, think of it this way, we need documentation to know when you're going to get paid. And if that's blessed by underwriting, then we know the funds are coming and your ability to repay the loan is legitimate. And that's really the crux of it. So the timing of how that works is, say you close a loan on June 1st, and your paycheck's not coming in until, June 15th. Well, that's actually fine.
It is fine. We can do that.
So we can do that. So even though you haven't gotten your first paycheck, we can still close the loan.
That's right.
It it really gets stretched when you go beyond like a month or two.
Yeah.
That's when it might not be doable, but every scenario is different. So every product we have has a different guideline of when that first paycheck needs to come. Some are within, 15 days because of how the lock of the loan works. Some are 30, some are 60. So we do have different timetable possibilities. But yeah, absolutely, we can close before you get your first paycheck.
Yeah, really navigating that calendar is super important. There is one guideline, I think, for one of the conventional products that requires you to have some cash reserves, maybe 2 or 3 months worth of payments extra just sitting in the bank. So there's some of those little nuances. We call them snakes in the grass, right? We try to get all those snakes in the grass uncovered before we get you under contract, essentially. We want to get all that stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
So when you put a contract in, you get an accepted offer, beyond a shadow of a doubt that loan's going to close, period.
Yeah.
And we sleep really good at night. We want you to sleep really good at night, right? Or sleep well. Sleep good or sleep well. I think sleep well is how you say it. Anyway, doesn't matter.
I don't know.
Either way.
Either way. As long as you're
going to
sleeping.
sleep. You're going to sleep.
As long as you're sleeping.
So good. Well, we touched on kind of relocating with the same company, relocating with a different company. One of the things we see a lot of times too is the trailing. The family's going to trail maybe. So one of the spouses got the job. They're excited. They're moving to Central Texas. The family's back, and maybe the spouse is still working, and maybe for the foreseeable future. So that's a scenario where we maybe need to buy this property here in Austin as an investment property, because not everyone's going to occupy the property. And so we're going to look at those different scenarios and figure out how do we navigate that if we're trying to use both incomes to qualify, and then can we qualify on the purchase in Austin, basically having both mortgages with no rental income coming in, because again, we're not going to have rental income coming in because we got one spouse living here and one spouse living back home, and there's not a defined timeline for the move. Those are tricky to navigate. So we just want to have those conversations and make sure that we understand what your goals are, and then we can put the right program in place to meet those goals.
Yeah, no, that's good. We did have a note. We actually have like a little bit of a cheat sheet board behind us.
Notes
about we talked about offer letters. I did, and one of them is also a work remote letter.
Yes,
that's actually pretty important for people that are remote workers and they just want to live in a different town because they can live anywhere. And so as you move to Austin, Texas, from wherever you might be, another state or another town, we just need to verify with your employer that you are allowed to work remote fully. And that is just a huge, gold star opportunity for people. It's just like you can work remotely from anywhere, and we just get that letter from your employer and you're good to go to keep that income going.
Yeah, and we saw that pick up tremendously during COVID. We saw so many folks moving to the Central Texas area that were working remote, and there's been some pullback on that. We've heard from some companies that are now asking their employees to come back to the office maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week. So really having documentation showing that you can work remote if that's your status, which is fantastic, and you can live anywhere. We've got to verify that, or maybe it's a remote position, but there is a local office.
Right.
We've seen that where it's a national company where there is an Austin office and there's a Seattle office and there's a San Francisco office or what have you. And so you may be moving from one of those cities, and even though you're remote, you also have that ability to work in the office. So
Right.
everyone's situation is so unique, and we love navigating this puzzle because this has really been, in the last few years, it's been a very common conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And navigating that, if you don't have a house to sell and you're moving here from somewhere else and you're simply renting, and that's less complicated, right? When you've got that other house to sell and it hasn't sold yet, and now you're trying to move and buy before you sell, those are the pieces we want to put together. And sometimes it makes more sense to move here, rent for a little bit. We know moving twice is really challenging and expensive, but move here, rent for 3 to 6 months, get established, get the home sold, and then move here. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're just going to talk about all those different pieces of the puzzle. And I think it's just a really common question that we
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. And a lot of this we go over when we do our first consult. So
Yes.
if you are in this scenario and you do want to contact us, please reach out. We'd love to help give good information so you can make good decisions. And this has been a good episode here.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts. However, there's not a ton at this time to really dive into because your
Right.
situation is unique. So we want to hear what you're looking to do, how we can best help you.
Yeah.
We'll unpack all that and help you as best we can. So,
But my big takeaways is use a local lender and a local realtor and make sure they work well as a team. And
yes.
then don't give up if somebody tells you no, because there are people that know how to make it happen for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, the local lender piece, for the reasons that we talked about, having the product scope, I think is
Mm-hmm.
really critical. Plus, the local lender, as we've talked about before, it's going to give you that leverage with your seller. When you go to make an offer, they can get us on the cell phone. They can call the lender to verify that pre-approval. What's behind that pre-approval letter is solid.
Mm-hmm.
This loan's going to close. There's certainty to the seller, to the listing agents, which we've really talked about a lot on the show. And I think that is so, so important. And not just use maybe who you used last time because they're based in another state and you've got a relationship with them. They may be the best fit, but get that second opinion so that you've got local knowledge of the market. And we didn't really get into how that can affect an appraisal, but lately I've had a couple of appraisal stories come back from national lenders that are using appraisal companies and they're not making value because they don't know the market. So the
That's
local
terrible.
lender, has the local appraisal relationship.
Yeah.
We understand the market here, which is very strong market right now. And we're not seeing hardly any appraisals come in short of value. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
making value. Properties are still appreciating, yes, at a less percentage than maybe they were. It's decelerated on the appreciation, but it's still appreciating out
Yeah.
here. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure we've got the best team around you to bring you to a successful real estate transaction.
Good.
So,
well, if you know anybody that is locating to Austin, please share this episode with them. And please like, subscribe, and share to our lending podcast with JB and myself. Thanks for tuning in.
Appreciate it. Take care.